Hey, it's Darik with another edition of Instagood, powered by justserve.org on Now 100.5. This is a special one because it also happens to be the big day of giving, Thursday of this week. And we're rallying to support more than 700 nonprofits serving the Sacramento area, El Dorado, Placer, Sacramento County, Yolo counties. And it's my pleasure to introduce Tom Summerfelt, PhD. He's the Vice President of Research at Feeding America. Now, Feeding America does work all over the country, and they also work alongside the Placer County Food Bank locally in the Sacramento area and the Auburn Interfaith Food Closet, both of whom we've spoken to in the past with our Instagood series. Now, Feeding America wants to work together to end hunger. They're the largest hunger relief organization in the United States. Again, welcome, Tom. Tom, it's good to see you. We happened to connect with each other when we met each other on a plane when I was on my way to a vacation for my birthday, and you were on a vacation too. And we got to talking, and I was so moved by your role and the organization Feeding America. Can you tell us what you do specifically at Feeding America and what you have coming up soon as far as initiatives and events to be able to raise awareness to feed people here in the United States?
Yeah, absolutely, Derek. And first, thank you so much for what you're doing to highlight nonprofits and the opportunity to just, underscore that while the United States is an awesome country, we still struggle with hunger, which, doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but it's true. In 2020, there were over 60 million people in the United States that needed food assistance that the charitable food system helped out. So that's almost 1 in 5 people in the United States. So tremendous. Um, Feeding America is a national organization. We partner with 200 food banks around the country, including DC and Puerto Rico. Um, those 200 food banks partner with another 60,000 agencies. So our organization, our network's reach is every single community in the United States plus Puerto Rico. I'm very proud of that. I get to lead a team, research and evaluation that helps track, the statistics, what's happening in the country, helps collect data about what's effective, what's working, what's not working. Um, it's a blessing to be able to have this kind of career, and I just feel so lucky about that.
We talked about this when we met each other about how food is obviously essential to life, but it's also for basic human dignity to be able to have a meal and not go hungry. And as you said in the beginning of this conversation, we are in the United States of America, and people around the world have a perception that we are the most powerful and richest country, and statistically that's true. And so it's hard to believe that there are any people in the United States who are going hungry. It's hard to believe that. And you are the man who has these statistics of people in the United States who have gone without meals. And it's hard to believe. Can you give us some numbers that may be surprising or shocking to people who don't know the amount of people who are going without meals, or who are technically hungry by definition, or food insecure by definition?
Yeah, absolutely. So even before the pandemic, and I'll talk a little bit about the pandemic as an unusual case, but even before the pandemic, there were 38 to 40 million Americans or folks in America who were dealing with food insecurity, meaning that it's not just like one night, but a consistent chronic issue and a crisis in their own life. Um, we have 330 million people that live in this country, and to have 40 million during good times, and that was the lowest it had been in 2 decades.
This is pre-pandemic. It's the lowest it has been. And that's
Pre-pandemic.
like 13%. I'm doing rough math, 14% of the population practically.
Exactly.
Something like that. Yeah.
Exactly right. And back to your point about dignity, and I would further it as equity.
Yes.
It's not equally distributed across the United States. That there are racial uh, aspects to this, geographic aspects to
Of
this.
course.
African American uh, individuals in the United States have much higher rates of food insecurity. Native Americans, much higher rates of food insecurity. And it's not individual traits or states, it's really historic uh, structural racism, discrimination. Um, it's a really striking. If you think about, when we talk about hunger in the United States, it's not like when they talk about hunger in third world countries where some food isn't safe, there's not clean drinking water. It's a
Right.
different scenario.
Right.
But in our country, it's one of distribution. We've got more than enough food to feed individuals, everybody in the country. Um, but we waste billions of
Oh
pounds of
gosh.
foods,
Yeah.
billions of pounds of food every year,
Right.
and unnecessarily,
Hmm.
you know. So
And
much of Feeding America's work is working with major retailers, major manufacturers. If you know something goes wrong on a food production line and the labels are upside down and they're not fit to be sold, can they be donated and then distributed through our network, for example, rather than thrown in a dump or gone to landfill where that
sure.
contributes to greenhouse gases and climate change, all kinds of other things.
Right. There's a domino effect of things that happen, right? And to your point about the wastefulness, how food is wasted, we also had a discussion. We were getting to know each other. I was telling you a little bit about my background. Both of my parents were immigrants to this country. I was born in the United States, but they came from food insecure backgrounds. They came from places where things were not easy. And the one thing that was sacred to us growing up is never waste food.
Yeah.
Because when you come from a position of not having very much of it, and then having an abundance of it and having the opportunity to have security, in their case coming to this country and living the American dream, you never forget what it was like not having a meal. And so I grew up, and I'm thankful I grew up with people who would never allow that to happen within our house. But it's such a shame to see the amount of waste that goes on in the United States when it comes to food. Just that really quick point there. The second one is, we talk about food safety. What does that mean? Does that mean that you guys are ensuring that when people are fed meals or given food, that it is safe for them to consume? What else does that mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a misunderstanding that food has expiration dates. And most of the food that's sold in the United States, except for baby food formula,
Mhm.
that date that's on the can or the jar or the package is a best buy date. And so if you exceed that date, it's not that it's unsafe. It's just, the company wants to, you know, uh, sell food at its freshest, put
Right.
it that way, at its freshest. Yet, obviously we're not going to, because we have respect for those people that we serve, we're not going to serve something that's not edible, that's
Right.
not safe, and that's not, it's not like you're going to get a package of wilted lettuce,
Right.
right? We're going to make
Right.
sure produce is fresh, that it's edible, that it's not beyond consumption.
Sure. And before I had a chance to speak with you today, or when I had first met you, I had heard a lot of things about Feeding America. And like I said, locally, this show and this radio station broadcast in Northern California, Sacramento area, the capital of California. And we have the Placer County Food Bank. We have a lot of amazing organizations in Northern California, and also the Auburn Interfaith Food Closet. And they work alongside Feeding America. What's amazing, though, specifically about this area, is that we have access to all sorts of agriculture. I mean, California produces so much for the entire country. In specifically locally in Northern California, in Sacramento, we have so much access to produce, and thankfully, we're able to give that food and the freshness of the food to people in need. And what's really nice about a lot of these organizations who've teamed up with Feeding America, these food banks, is that they don't ask any questions. If you're in need, They trust that it is legitimate need and they give it to people and no questions asked. And I think that, I mean, they've been doing it. A lot of them been doing it for 30 or 40 years, including Feeding America, been around for 40 years, I think. Right.
Exactly.
And,
Yeah.
and this is, like I said, their objective is to be able to feed people, of course, but then it goes beyond that. Like you were saying, there's so many other facets to feeding people. Like you said, an equitable access to food, to fresh food, and to be able to eat and have basic human dignity.
Yeah, that's so great that you highlight that. I mean, one of the things that we do as a national organization is facilitate when there's a surplus in one region. In California, there is abundance
Yes,
and
there is.
surplus, right?
Yeah,
Um, Whereas in, New Mexico or other places, it's a little tougher. So we facilitate the transfer of that surplus
that too.
to other
Yeah,
areas of the country. We have
yeah,
regional cooperatives that work together. Um, and I love the point that you highlighted. My team and I call it assuming mercy and grace. That if people are requesting charitable food assistance or help with food, that we're not going to grill through, give me your last three income tax returns and
right,
this,
right,
that, or the other thing. It's hard enough to say I need help in this country
right.
because we're such a pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of culture.
It's true.
Um, and I think that the pandemic is awful for a lot of things. One of the kind of silver linings for me that came out of the pandemic was that people realized that, you know, food insecurity is a real thing in the United States. I remember I was I was living in uh, a neighborhood in South Chicago, and there was a bar down the street that used to donate excess food and things like that to the local pantry. And in the pandemic, that bar shut down, and the restaurant associated with it shut down. And suddenly, that owner found himself not donating food, but requesting help. And so I think that people, the stigma of getting free food has started to dissipate, and people recognize that from time to time, it's something you got to do.
Yeah, and I think that what you just said, really struck me. It's hard to me personally. I find it hard denying any person a meal. I find it hard denying anybody food. I mean, it's hard to believe that people would have to. It's hard. I know I've seen it with my own eyes where people feel
Yeah.
ashamed to ask to eat, and I'm like, that should not be the case in the world. It should not be the case anywhere in the world where people should feel ashamed to want to feed themselves.
Yeah. No,
It
absolutely.
hurts my soul to think about it. It really does, because in my opinion, again, I can't speak for everybody. Maybe not everybody sees it this way. We have a moral, and I would argue even a spiritual obligation as humans to help one another when it comes to these things.
Yeah, and something as basic and life-giving as food,
That's right.
and there is no single face, no single group that is out requesting for help. It is literally a cross section of our great country.
Yeah.
When you look down the line, and it's what's striking to me as well, Darik, is people are so grateful and feel so lucky to have this safety net in place across the country. So the good work that they're doing in Sacramento at the food bank and at the um, oh, I can't remember the name. What was this?
The
The
Auburn Interfaith Food Closet, Placer
Interfaith
County.
Food Closet. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank
It's
you.
just a couple of many of food banks, obviously, in the area.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So the food closet and the food bank there. Um, you know, you a lot of times you have these households that are in crisis and they reach out for food and they get free food or groceries for a week, 2 weeks, maybe a month if they really stretch it. But what's really unique about that is it allows them to make other trade-offs. So because I don't have to pay for food to feed my family, I can get that flat tire fixed on the car so I can make it to work so I can actually keep my job.
Exactly.
Or
Right.
I can pay that medical bill that's actually causing me to be in financial
Uh,
crisis and things
Right.
like that.
And I think that, you know, we talk about these examples, and some people find it hard to believe that circumstances are really that dire, right? Like somebody said, well, I have to actually not fix my car just so I can feed my family. And the fact is that these scenarios actually exist. And for many people, and they're very lucky, they don't have to worry about that. But there are people in this country, and like you said, a significant portion of people, surprisingly, in the United States that are, food insecure, don't know where their next meal is coming from. And I think we have an obligation as humans to help one another, to, as Americans especially, to have that sense of pride and respect for one another, to do what we can to make sure that nobody has that kind of fear or insecurity about the most basic thing, which is being fed. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
and again, I just think that Feeding America is such an incredible organization, and its associated food banks are doing such amazing work all over this country, be it Sacramento, Chicago, Washington D.C., connecting everybody and feeding people. And I think it's a great organization. It's really an honor to have met you and to speak to you, Tom. And I thank you for everything that you and your team do. And I also wanted to let people know, if they want to take action, they can go to feedingamerica.org. You can give monthly. I know there's monetary donations to help kids and families in need. Also, you can volunteer your time and your talents. And that's really why I'm so glad that we were able to get together today, because the big day of giving is to emphasize all the incredible work that nonprofits like Feeding America do, and to let people know, hey, today is the day to inspire you to give, whether that's your time, or if you are so gracious enough to be able to donate money, to do it today. So again, feedingamerica.org. You can find out how you can take action and get involved. Tom, I don't want to take up the rest of your day, but it's such an honor and a pleasure to speak to you, to see you once again. Thank you for taking time. And I hope that we stay in contact. And if there's anything that we can ever do for you guys, we have your back here in the Sacramento area, and anywhere else you need us. Just want to
Really
let you
appreciate
know.
it, Darik. Thank you so much. And just to, I'd be remiss if I didn't put in a quick plug.
Please.
Every dollar that is donated generates 10 meals. So every
Wow.
little bit helps, because that's part of what we do. And then 98% of all donations go to direct service. So it's a very small piece that we use to facilitate, getting word out, like marketing and other kinds
Sure.
of things. So every little bit helps. Thanks, Darik.
Tom of Feeding America, Tom Summerfelt, thank you so much for taking time out today for this edition of Instagood and celebrating the big day of giving, motivating people to help out in their communities. We really appreciate you so much.
Thank you,
It's
sir.
an honor to see you again, Tom. Take care.
You too now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.